Women make up roughly half the world's population. And yet, women's health is one of the least researched topics in healthcare. The gender health gap has kept women on the sidelines, making effective diagnosis and treatment hard to come by. In India, social factors make this much worse. In most households, women are the first to get up, the last to eat, and often the most neglected when it comes to nutrition. Why is that the case? What are some health conditions that women are more prone to? We'll answer these questions and more in this episode of Scientifically Yours. Hello and welcome to The Wire. I am Elisha Vermani and you're watching Scientifically Yours. We are talking about women's health in this episode, so let's take a quick look at some news. A report released by the McKinsey Health Institute has found that women spend 25% more time in poor health than men in their lifetime. Now, obviously, if this problem was fixed, then millions of women would lead healthier, happier lives. But what's more shocking is that if the gender health gap was closed, it could boost the global economy by at least $1 trillion annually by 2040. That's how expensive it is to ignore women's health. A new report from the Center for Intimacy Justice reveals that major tech platforms like Meta, Google, Amazon, and TikTok are systematically suppressing content related to women's sexual and reproductive health, while allowing similar content for men. According to the report, organizations that shared information about topics like menopause, menstrual health, endometriosis had their ads removed or rejected, and even faced account suspensions, while content on men's health, on the other hand, was freely available on these platforms. The Indian government recently released some numbers from a time use survey which measures how men and women spend their time between unpaid and paid activities. It found that in 2024, women spent almost 20% of their time on unpaid care work, which means domestic work, taking care of other family members, etc., while men spent a mere 2.6% of their time on such tasks. How is this disproportionate burden on women connected to their health? We will find out this in the next segment when we chat with some experts about a health condition that women are more prone to, osteoporosis. Welcome Dr Ambrish Mithal and Dr Harshvardhan Hegde. Dr Ambrish Mithal is a Padma Bhushan awardee. He's the head of endocrinology and diabetes at Max Healthcare, and he's also a member of the World Bone Health Group by WHO. Dr Harshvardhan Hegde is an orthopaedic surgeon with over 25 years of experience. I'm very pleased to welcome you both to the show today. Thanks very much for coming. And I'm going to kick this off by asking the most simple question. What's osteoporosis and why do women particularly need to care about it?
So osteoporosis is a disease where the bones become weak. हड्डी की कमजोरी माने हड्डी में जो ताकत रहती है वो उसके अंदर कैल्शियम से बनती है. जब वो कैल्शियम हड्डी के बाहर निकलने लगता है तो हड्डी कमज़ोर हो जाती है. बिना चोट लगे ही सिर्फ खांसने से या छींकने से झुकने से आपकी हड्डी टूट सकती है. अगर रोड ट्रैफिक एक्सीडेंट हो तो किसी की हड्डी टूट सकती है, पर बिना चोट के अगर हड्डी टूटे तो वो ऑस्टियोपोरोटिक फ्रैक्चर होता है.
Are women more prone to it?
Yes, women are clearly more prone to osteoporosis. The ratios vary in populations, 4:1, 4 women to 1 man, like that. 5:1 in some. But the thing is that women have a particular propensity to osteoporosis. And that happens because, A, women start off with a smaller skeleton than men. So when we are building our bone, which happens only till maybe about 20 years of age, you build bone. So men are bigger. So when you're bigger, you have bigger and stronger bones. That's the one basic thing. But even more importantly, women have to go through menopause, which means that, at the age of 45 or 50 somewhere, they start losing their hormones. Once you lose your estrogen, then calcium leaches out from the bone and the bones become weaker. There is no exact counterpart in men, although male hormones also decline with aging, but not in a sharp way like women's hormones. So postmenopausal osteoporosis, that's why is a commonly used word for women. And basically it means that because the estrogen has gone down in your system, your bones will not retain calcium well, and they need extra support to do that.
Right. And is it just an old people's problem, or do younger women also need to take care of this? Because you mentioned menopause, which is happening later in life. What about women my age?
So classically, when we talk of osteoporosis, we are not talking of other conditions which are associated and often seen in younger women. When you talk of classic, either postmenopausal osteoporosis, or some people call it senile osteoporosis of aging, it definitely happens more in older people. Older people doesn't necessarily mean very old people, but it could also mean women at menopause, because they start losing bone very sharply at that point, very steeply. If they have other risk factors, so for example, if someone is already frail, someone is deficient in their diets with calcium, doesn't have enough vitamin D, doesn't have a good muscle mass, all such women will start experiencing osteoporosis earlier. But as we age, the prevalence increases dramatically. So this is something when maybe Dr. Hegde and we started our careers, we didn't see that much. But now we see so many older people. There's not a day when I don't see people 85 plus, etc. in my outpatient clinic. And such people will definitely be very much prone to fracture. It becomes a major cause of morbidity, and sometimes it can be fatal also, a hip fracture, for example, in the very elderly. Okay. And since our population is going in that direction, yes, it is primarily a problem of the elderly, but can definitely occur at a younger age. One important point here, that is the problem of osteoporosis, the genesis starts in childhood or maybe even earlier. That's very important to understand.
Tell us more about that.
So since we're talking about age, so we need to maintain good bone health. We need good bones as a child or an adolescent. During the age of, say, puberty, maybe say between 10 to 18 approximately, most of the calcium accrues into our bone. It goes into our bone. Now after 20, different sort of figures, but around that time, very little calcium actually in a natural environment will build our bone. So we build our bone bank by the time we are, so let's say 20. And maybe you can maintain it nicely till 30 or 35. But after that, you're living on your savings if you're not doing enough. So building your bone bank at that stage is very important. So if our children and adolescents are malnourished, not getting enough calcium, not getting enough D, not getting enough physical exercise.
Active exercise. I think that's so important.
So the peak bone mass will be less.
Less, of course.
And therefore at 30, 35, they will, when they start, maybe at 40, when they start losing a bone,
they're already
if you start with a better bone balance, you have a better outcome at the end. So it's throughout the lifespan.
I was going to ask you what's something surprising about bone health that most people wouldn't know, but I think you've already sort of answered that. Is there anything else like that we should know?
I think I mentioned it briefly, but what is very important is that when we talk of osteoporosis, it is a silent condition. People will say that I'm feeling fine. Why should I get a bone density test done? Why should I get... But there are definite criteria. We are looking at primary prevention. We want to prevent them from getting osteoporotic fractures in the same way as you would want to treat high blood pressure. Why would you treat high blood pressure? Because you want to avoid a stroke.
Yeah.
Why would you treat cholesterol? You would treat cholesterol because you want to avoid a heart attack, even though you have no symptoms. Patient has no symptoms, right? But you still. So similarly, if at a particular age, whether 50 or 60, depending on the individual patient, if you get a bone density done and you find a low bone density and find the patient is at high risk, if you institute preventive measures at that point, you will reduce the risk of fracture very substantially. This people don't understand. They say, हमें तो हड्डी की कोई प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है, हमको क्यों डॉक्टर हेगडे ने बेकार में बोन डेंसिटी टेस्ट बता दिया? हमें हड्डी की
More than that, women are more likely to neglect their health as well. डॉक्टर के पास जाते ही नहीं हैं, या घर में अगर कोई, even if someone voices that they have a problem, तो there's very little encouragement to go get it checked or get this addressed in any way. Do you see that in your day-to-day where women have come in but it's already too late now to do anything?
No. You can still do it even in advanced osteoporosis, not to give up treatment. I mean, but I think it's, for me, exercises are very integral to keeping the bone health. So I have a, constant issue with patients that saying that household work is not necessarily exercise. Like I can't say that my surgery is exercise, carrying out surgery is exercise. So I think what Dr. Mithal was saying is that from childhood, we have to ask our children to play, to get into sports, to try and drink less Coke and, aerated drinks.
Very, very important point.
Because it chelates.
It has phosphorus and other things that sucks out calcium from the bone.
Yeah. And then we don't have a good bone bank. And as age advances, of course, we lose some.
So it's true that drinking milk is the way to strengthen your bones? Is that
there is absolutely no doubt that the most important things for a bone, as Dr. Hegde mentioned, one is definitely exercise. And along with that, proper nutrition, which means three things, which means good protein intake, which often Indian diets neglect. We don't have enough protein. We think we have the best diet in the world, but actually we don't. Second is adequate calcium. And third is vitamin D, which is also a big issue in India.
Yeah.
So all these three, if they're optimized for all our children, we'll have much less osteoporosis 40, 50 years from now.
So the Indian population is not really geared up to age.
Yes.
Although numbers-wise, we're heading in that direction.
Yes. So we have to look after. Otherwise, they'll become a strain on the family, themselves, and also on society.
So let me give you an idea of the impact of osteoporosis. ठीक है हड्डियां कमजोर हो गई तो ठीक है जब होगा फ्रैक्चर देखा जाएगा. Yeah, I mean this happens, So heart attack के लिए नहीं, people are aware about it. Stroke, they're aware कि ये गड़बड़ नहीं हो जाए. हड्डी का. So the
Disease का perception ही अलग है.
Perception. So because of awareness and understanding. So as Dr. Hegde was saying now, if you get a hip fracture, there is a 20% chance, and in India data shows about 25% chance, you won't survive 1 year.
Yes.
Oh.
Because if you're 75, 80 years old, get a hip fracture, you're immobilized, there are millions of things that happen, fracture heals, doesn't heal, even if the doctor does a great surgery, even then, so just immobilization, that is why now the concept is to operate quickly and mobilize quickly. Absolutely. So we realize that it has significant implications for individual health, for family, and for society.
The more Dr. Mithal is effective, the less we will work.
It's bad for your business then.
It's bad for business. Yes, he's bad for business. Good for society, but bad for our business.
What's a societal aspect that you have observed while treating women with osteoporosis in India? Because I'm sure Indian society has a role to play.
So देखिए हम लोग के यहाँ जैसे होता है सब तरह के परिवार होते हैं पर ये आपकी आर्थिक स्थिति पे भी निर्भर है पर टिपिकल मिडिल क्लास फैमिली इंडियन जैसे होते हैं तो उसमें थोड़ी जो महिला है जो घर की जो लेडी होती है उसकी सेहत पे कम ध्यान दिया जाता है और अक्सर उसका काम और लोगों की सेवा में ही लग जाता है तो न्यूट्रिशन में ऐसा नहीं है कि न्यूट्रिशन नहीं होता है लेकिन गलत न्यूट्रिशन होता है वो अक्सर जिसको हम लोग हेल्थी समझते हैं रोटी चावल सिर्फ कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स ही खाते हैं प्रोटीन इंटेक्स इंडियन विमेन के काफ़ी कम है मेन के भी कम है लेकिन विमेन का तो बहुत ही कम है तो इसलिए ये दोनों चीज़ें इंपॉर्टेंट है और जैसे डॉक्टर हेगडे ने कहा हाउस होल्ड वर्क तो सब करते हैं लेडीज़ दैट्स व्हाई दे आर गुड दे आर एक्टिव पर एक्चुअल एक्सरसाइज के लिए टाइम निकालना उनके लिए मुश्किल होता है तो ये चैलेंज तो रहता है.
But what about women who want to, get ahead of the problem? Menopause तो नहीं avoid कर सकते. It's going to happen.
Yes.
And your calcium will get sucked out of your bones.
Yes.
But what are some things that women specifically can do other than these things?
During pregnancy years and reproductive years, make sure आपका कैल्शियम प्रोटीन इंटेक ठीक है और कुछ एक्सरसाइज आप ज़रूर कर रहे हैं. तो कई बार लोगों को मिल्क एलर्जी होती है तो वही प्रॉब्लम रहती है तो दही से कंपनसेट करें कुछ भी करें बट यू हैव टू डू दैट देयर इज नो ऑप्शन है ना.
तो प्रोटीन अगर आप वेजिटेरियन हो
जी
तो फिर कहाँ से प्रोटीन मिलेगा?
इसीलिए मैं ये मानता हूँ और ये सब रिसर्च ने भी यही शो किया है कि डेयरी प्रोडक्ट्स आर द बेस्ट थिंग दैट कैन हैपन. डेयरी प्रोडक्ट्स आर द ओनली वे जिसमें प्रोटीन भी मिलेगा. डेयरी प्रोडक्ट माने दूध दही पनीर एटसेट्रा इसमें प्रोटीन मिलेगा कैल्शियम मिलेगा और भी चीज़ें आयरन मतलब और चीज़ें भी मिलेंगी. तो इसलिए ये डेयरी प्रोडक्ट्स बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट हैं हमारे लिए हमारे हेल्थ के लिए विशेषकर बच्चों में बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट.
And what what roles do hormones play? If you can just talk to us in a little more detail about that, because I feel like hormonal health is very neglected in the country. We don't have enough conversations about these things. It's also difficult to bring up the subject, societally.
So I'll tell you, as an orthopaedic surgeon, it's not as well researched as Dr. Mithal's, but I'll tell you this. Women have a bad deck that is played onto them, the cards. So you start your period, and then every month it kind of fluctuates up and down, reaches menopause in 2-3 years, it stops. Whereas in men, it comes slowly, remains like that, and slowly goes down. So here you have two completely different individuals. So to compare men with women, I think is a big fallacy. And I really think that one needs to look at this hormone in a far more detail and sympathetic sense.
That's my point. I'm interjecting here, but a lot of our research focuses on the man as the standard. So a lot of treatments that these studies produce, they're also keeping in mind the man.
Correct, but it is changing.
But
Sir,
not in osteoporosis. Not in osteoporosis.
Not in
Osteoporosis, in fact, it's been the other way around. The research is all postmenopausal osteoporosis. Yes. Well, probably more, but still, but undoubtedly. In fact, the fact that men also get osteoporosis and can get severe osteoporosis is a relatively recent recognition. It was actually confined to women. The important part, of course, is what do we do? We're going on saying, prevent, but you prevent anything, it still happens, right? Diabetes happens, cholesterol happens, heart attacks happen. What do you do after that? So number one is that we need to screen people on time. Apart from the preventive aspects, you need to get...
What age do we start doing that?
So definitely at 60, but in some people at higher risk at 50. Okay? But
at this moment, you're talking about women.
I'm talking of women, yes. So women 50 menopause, it's a good time, but you can easily delay the screening till 60 also if you're talking of general population screening. Now the problem is that screening is done by a bone density test, done by DXA, DEXA system. But one is we have to have some kind of either clinical or ideally a bone density screen for people. Now if you're identified to be at high risk in that, then you go on a particular track. If you're identified as a very high risk in that, you may want to initiate treatment based on something called your fracture risk score. Even at 50, 55.
Is this an expensive test? I'm assuming it is.
The test is expensive, yes, but it's available in the government system also, in at least the major hospitals.
All the major hospitals. So it is not as widely available as one would wish.
It's not. And it's disproportionately, as usual in India. It's available a lot in some places, and this is just...
And one line about the DEXA study, that it's not always calibrated very well, the machine.
Technology has to be
used properly. Otherwise, it can lead to fallacious...
A lot of confusion.
Yeah. A lot of confusion.
So once you've done that, and once you've identified, there are excellent medications available. That's also very important to understand, which is why I think you were asking that, right? As we do, we would identify patients at high risk. We are still at high risk. We are not gone into fractured patients. So we will identify patients at high risk and initiate therapy like a statin for cholesterol or treatment for blood pressure or treatment for diabetes. I'm pushing that analogy because people understand that. So उसी तरीके से हमको इसके लिए भी we have to make sure that we initiate, there are good, powerful treatments that can reduce your fracture risk by at least 50%, if not 60-70%. 70%. So if you do that the right way, at the right time, you can reduce your fracture risk a lot. At the same time, the lifestyle measures have to continue. You can't do it without exercising, without, those things.
It all complements each other ultimately. Yeah.
And, some of the things that a lady comes and says, I've become shorter.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's a very common thing that I'm, dowagers, I'm shrinking. Okay. This is an indication of osteoporosis playing a big role, that the vertebral heights are going down. So even though we might call this a not very clear version of fracture, these are microscopic fracture occurring. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, vertebral fractures for research are the cleanest fracture to be studied for osteoporosis. All others have other factors. Vertebral fracture
has just
direct correlation with osteoporosis. So that is prevention of first fracture. Then, of course, if you do fracture, even that is very much fixable now with good surgery. So one big change I have seen in my career of 40 years of endocrinology is that, these guys operate people who are 85 and 88 now and mobilize them in 2 days. Those people would never have undergone any surgery 20, 25 years ago. So there's a huge change there. So treatments are, then after surgery, again medication is crucial.
Crucial, so that you don't have another incident like this.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to summarize two things. One, what's the most common mistake people make when it comes to bone health and with a special focus on women? And the other thing I'll ask you to summarize is what's one thing people can change almost immediately, like today, if they want to fix their bone health or they want to get better about it? Yeah.
I think the most common mistake that I have seen people make, people with osteoporosis, diagnosed osteoporosis, is that they give up their medication. It's a big challenge. Every outpatient clinic, I struggle with this. People take medicine for a couple of months and stop it. This is long term. It's in years, sometimes lifelong. So long-term treatment, not giving up the medication because you're feeling fine. अब ठीक लग रहा है अब तो दवाई ठीक है हो गया छोड़ दी फ्रैक्चर 3 महीने पहले हुआ 3 दवाई खाई फिर छोड़ दिया that's not okay. That's the commonest mistake that I see. And one thing that you can do every day, if you're talking of one step, it's actually about a step. It is about a physical step. If you can add exercise, that's the best step. Increase your steps. Any exercise done in vertical posture, and Dr. Hegde will bear me out, is good for the bone. Okay. And it's important that you don't think of the bone as just bone. It's a bone muscle unit. So when you're building muscle with some strength training, that's also feeding the bone. That's one. And secondly, it reduces your risk of falling. Fall prevention is the biggest thing when we have now so many elderly patients.
There's also a right way to fall, I've heard.
Yes, but that's very hard for people. You have to be very fit. But fall prevention strategies at home, our homes are not designed for fall prevention, So there are many things in that, but those are the things that we can do to help us.
So better coordination, better balance and all that.
I think that's a good note to end on. I thank you both very much again for taking time out for this, and that was a wonderful discussion. Thanks so much. Remember the McKinsey report I mentioned earlier? It also found that almost 65% treatments for health conditions studied in that report put women at a disadvantage, either because the treatment was less effective in women or because it wasn't accessible for them. Asthma is a common health condition that affects both men and women, but the most common treatment for it is 20% less effective in women. Tell me in the comments what you think about this. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to The Wire, and I will see you next month.